Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. As I know that participants are joining us from all time zones from around the country. I am Leon Drury and I'm privileged to chair the Textiles, Clothing and Footwear Industry Reference Committee, or IRC as it's generally referred to. In the spirit of reconciliation, IBSA Manufacturing acknowledges the custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. We welcome everyone, particularly we have the Chair of IBSA, Mr Graham Russell, our industry panellists and my fellow IRC members. Thank you for making the time to participate in this very important conversation today. This is the first of a series of focused webinars being hosted by IBSA Manufacturing on behalf of its industry. On behalf of its industry reference committees, to further the conversation around how to ensure that the skills required are made available to Australian industry and its workforce in light of the government's 6 national manufacturing priority areas. It is acknowledged that building a competitive capability in Australia's manufacturing workforce will be a key to industry success locally, nationally and globally. Risks to Australia's local supply chains and historic reliance on imports have been exposed, with an opportunity to reposition our sovereign capability and ensure availability of critical materials and products onshore wherever this is possible. We've all heard many examples of how successful employers have been able to readily digitise their business processes, marketing and promotion mechanisms in the absence of face-to-face customer interaction. In many instances, creativity, innovation and responsiveness have been the key factors in resilient businesses who have successfully pivoted to diversify their products and or meet customer needs. We also know that COVID-19 has seen a rethinking of priorities in many, if not all, industry sectors, but particularly in manufacturing. I would now like to invite Sharon Robertson, the CEO of IBSA Group and IBSA Manufacturing, to facilitate the main proceedings of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne, and I'd like to add my welcome to everyone for participating in today's event. It is great to be joined by so many of you. And just so you know, we've got employers and industry representatives from organisations across Australia, providing tremendous support to the manufacturing and training industry. So a big welcome. As Leon mentioned today's webinar is one of our first of our industry webinar series that we'll be providing governments with the relevant on-the-ground advice from you that they've requested to ensure your voice is heard. In total, we will be running around 6 industry webinars over the coming weeks, which will hopefully provide a strong level of insight and feedback across the manufacturing sector to bring together into a report. And this report is planned to be presented to government and stakeholders. And so the discussions being held today will be very important and an information channel through the decision-making bodies. Just before we actually get started, I just wanted to share with you a short video from Senator the Honourable Michaela Cash, Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business. I'm sure some of you may be aware of her, but she's given us some additional context for our discussions today, which I thought would be useful to share.
And thank IBSA and AI Group for working with me each and every step of the way to ensure that we had the feedback from on the ground that we needed. Vocational education and training is a partnership. And it's not just a partnership between the Commonwealth states and territories. It's a partnership between governments across Australia and industry. Because if we're not delivering for you, you can't deliver for the Australian people by way of job creation.
Nick, and as you've just heard from Mr Cash, today provides an exciting opportunity for industries to provide input into the rollout of many things, including the modern manufacturing strategy, particularly in relation to how the textiles and apparel industry can not only support these priority areas, but ensure that we have the skilled workforce required for a competitive advantage into the future. In terms of format for today, we're pleased to have some really important panellists with us to participate in a Q&A session. That will last for approximately 30 minutes, which will be followed by a more in-depth discussion in a facilitated breakout group. And then we're planning to come back together for a short plenary session before we finish. We'll do our best to make sure that we do stay on time. From a technical perspective, you would have heard some things from Michelle before, but just to reiterate, we encourage you to add comments and questions via the chat function in both this session, the Q&A session, and the breakout groups, which will be following. We will be recording all the comments as we don't want to miss anyone's point, so if we don't get the chance to get to them all, we'll certainly do our level best to make sure they get incorporated. As we had 150 registrations, so can you please ensure that you've got your mics muted? There will be opportunities for individuals to be invited to share their comments during the sessions, but if you can stay on mute until that time, that would really help ensure the maximum, I suppose, benefit for all involved. If throughout any of this session, if you have any technical issues, please refer to the phone number that was in your registration link. Okay, so we might go to our QA panellists, and I might ask those to unmute themselves. But just I'll do a quick intro before we actually start the line of inquiry. For our first session, the Q&A, we are joined by industry panellists. Firstly, can I introduce Leila Najahibri? Now, for some of you, you might know, but some of you don't. She is the CEO of Australian Fashion Council. She was appointed to this role in February 2020, having been actively involved with the council, and it is also a member of its board of directors since 2018. With a background in economics and accounting, Leila has close to 20 years experience in fashion brand management and development across APAC, Europe and North America. Joining Leila, we have Anna Drugas. Now, unfortunately, Michael Ryan, who was scheduled to be with us today, is unable to join us and sends his apologies. We're delighted, though, to have Anna here, who is the Executive Officer of Specialist Textiles Association. Anna's been involved in a number of industry initiatives. She was the founding member and chair of the Furnishing Industry Training Advisory Group and the Young Networks Group, which is also a founder of a range of association committees for training, marine fabrication and fabric structures, and is a member of Women's in Textiles Committee. And finally, we have John Condolis. John is the chairman and co-founder of Nobody Denim and a board member of the Australian Fashion Council. He's passionate about growing and re-establishing the clothing manufacturing industry in Australia. Nobody Denim story, for those that you don't know, what began with a small family-built denim laundry in the back streets of Melbourne in 1999. John is committed to quality, maintaining an ethical and sustainable operational facility with transparency at the core of Nobody business activities. So welcome to all of our panellists. Whilst I ask questions for the panel, I would like to invite the audience to submit in the chat function any questions they might have for the panel, and I'll do my best to get to them. Panel members, thank you so much for joining us today, and can I ask that you please unmute your mics. To set the context for today's discussion, the Commonwealth Modern Manufacturing Strategy and its associated budget incentives provide a unique opportunity to take a first look at the implications on skills development in textiles, clothing and footwear industry. We all know that having effective supply chains is key to the future of manufacturing, and manufacturing can't grow without a skilled workforce. If recent times have shown us anything, it is the speed with which we need to provide these skills to ensure the flexibility and resilience of the workforce. So if I can now start with the questions, I've got the first one for Leila. Then Leila, I'd love to hear from you about what you see as the future of textiles and apparel over the next 2 to 5 years.
Thanks, Sharon. I actually also want to thank you for qualifying the words textile and apparel in the question. You know, using the word fashion when we discuss the textile and apparel industry is sometimes misleading. People somehow think of fashion as a superficial, frivolous business, a bunch of creatives throwing lovely dresses and showing them off on a runway while drinking champagne and, you know, sitting around doing not much. In fact, anyone who works in the industry knows that this industry is incorporates a very diverse and deep value chain. Complex business model that spans from primary industry, you know, wool, cotton, harvesting, spinning, to design and product development, manufacturing, to technology and innovation, responsible practice, supply chain management, waste and end-of-life management, and of course, training and retraining and education. So it's a very deep and large industry. And to your point, back to your question, I guess, is, you know, the future of that industry. I think there will be a lot of change, and we will see big change in the industry in the next 2 to 5 years. In particular, in the way we measure the success and failure of businesses in the sector. At the moment, most companies, whether our industry or many other industries, measure success and failure of business in the sector via the concept of the EBIT P&L. A P&L where predominantly the focus is on the bottom line, but it also focuses on more sales, more discounting, more stores and more revenue. It's really an unsustainable business model, economically, socially, and environmentally unsustainable. And we've seen, even before COVID hit the world, really, we've seen many businesses in the industry go under. And so it's time for change, as I say. The focus, I believe, will be a reinvention of the business model across creative design, production design, marketing and sales, workforce design, and of course, as I said, end-of-life management design. And all of this will require a whole new range of qualifications and skills. It will afford young Australians and mature Australians opportunities for exciting new career pathways. So really thinking about our industry, it looks a little bit glum at the moment, but there's a great opportunity in the future.
Sharon,
My apologies. Thank you, Leila. Certainly sounds very exciting when you look at the complexity of the industry, the change you're talking about, and the reinvention across all the different aspects of the business. And it's still thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, Sharon, was that for me?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. The specialised textiles industry supplies or is involved in more heavy-duty industrial textiles. So while some of the core skills would be very similar to the ones that Leila just explained, our members and our industry are pretty much involved in the more heavy-duty textiles, which are used for either decorative or protective purposes in many sectors, such as the marine, the automotive, building construction, defence, mining, agricultural, and many more. The end products that are made, just a few examples would be shade sails, sporting arena roofs, pool covers, blind awnings, banners, and certainly a lot more in that category. We see the industrial textiles playing an increasingly important role in protection as the climate continues to change, with severe weather patterns becoming more and more frequent. Industries such as horticulture, agriculture, mining, and local councils even will be looking to provide a more controlled environment, whether it be for the crops, animals, or people. Fabric covers provide an economical alternative to the steel option, and they're appearing everywhere on the Australian landscape in increasing numbers, from sporting construction sites to stadiums. Textiles are becoming more advanced and as they handle all weather extremes. So textiles are being developed to be, at the moment, self-cleaning. They include sensors that react to human touch that can actually act as an interface platform in many applications, from smart automobile consoles to wearable human device interfaces. Along with governments around the world, including ours, already imposing requirements such as fire retardancy in fabrics, sun protection as mandatory for textiles being used in certain applications, manufacturers are forced to respond by producing these, which means that end product manufacturers, who we call fabricators, and our installers, will be required to understand the properties of the textiles in order to fabricate and install them. Our future also includes advancements in sustainable textiles that are environmentally friendly and recyclable. And as the world looks to reduce waste going into landfill and consumers are becoming more environmentally aware, industrial textiles will have to respond to the needs of the modern world. And this will, or actually has already, not only created opportunity for the manufacture of environmentally friendly textiles, it also creates a need for collection, storage and recycling processes, which opens opportunities in educating and retraining an entire industry, or even creating new industries. So overall, yes, the year has been really tough for us all, but I feel the future of textiles is actually quite bright and the possibilities are endless.
Thank you, Anna, and looking forward to hearing more about that shortly. John, given your extensive experience in the industry, be keen to hear on your thoughts.
Thanks, Sharon. I'd just like to add to what Layla was talking about, the champagne industry. It's a big perception of what everyone thinks fashion is all about, but when I talk about 99% perspiration, I think in our industry it's 99.9% perspiration and probably 0.1% of champagne. So that's probably the best analogy that I could think of based on what Layla was talking about. But I think it's really important that we turn back the time. Now, I want to go back to the late 80s and the early 90s when I entered the industry as probably 86, as an 18-year-old, and what it was like. It was thriving. The other thing that was really important, there was a lot of private industry, and what I mean, they were privately owned. You know, the likes of Country Road, the likes of Just Jeans, Portman's, all the big players that you see now that are obviously publicly owned. It was a thriving industry. And for those that do remember, there was the skills that were there. It was transferable. It was amazing. So as we went through the year in the 90s up to 2000, there was actually a change in mindset, and there was a fear of what was going to happen. And I think we need to really reflect and go, well, what did happen? And it was about the just overseas and the competition that we had that was coming in on our shores. So a lot of these private businesses did sell out, and it was all about moving offshore. So those skills between 2000 and 2010 did move offshore in order to, I guess, sustain their businesses and make sure they continued to grow. So what happened locally? It was businesses like ours and many others, independents, that still maintained it here, and they required that skill set to be here, and it's still held with ourselves. Now, I want to be clear about one thing. Australia is not a volume-produced, I guess, textile industry. It's really important that we agree to that. We can't produce goods to supply Target and your Kmart's and the likes of those big conglomerates. But there's an opportunity that we do have an industry to supply others with niche products, with various types of, I guess, at different tiers, whether it's from a mainstream in a certain level right up to the luxury. So all those opportunities in front of us are there to be taken. It's just how we actually take that moving forward. So I guess there's a lot of skills that still are maintained in the industry, but they're actually dying. And if we don't do something really quickly over the next 2 to 5 years, or actually in the next 12 months, I would say, there is a high risk of these skills that are needed to continue the textile sector, which does include a lot of defence, health. Now, through this pandemic, we all know that not many health products are actually manufactured in Australia. So what do we do around that space? That's something that we actually pivoted into to move and see how do we adapt to actually produce a scrub or a mask. But the skill set we're lucky to have that internally. And if we didn't have that, what would we do? So I guess if we don't move and change and do something really quickly, there might not be an industry.
Look, that sounds really, really interesting, John, and certainly it's just keeping you in that, I suppose, zone of opportunities. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on what you think the modern manufacturing strategy, obviously government has committed a lot to help modernise manufacturing. What do you think that presents by way of opportunities for the industry?
I think there are endless opportunities. It's just how we actually pinpoint the priority of our approach to ensure that we can bring something to life. You know, it's from education, from technology, from innovation. It's about picking the right, I guess, tasks or projects to bring that to life. Now, how we do that is another project on its own. And I think that's probably the biggest one that I think Layla and myself and other members are actually battling on. I won't say battling, trying to put it together of bringing that to life, because it is quite challenging. What do we focus on? How do we bring that to life? And what are the 12-month and a 10-year plan? Working together and collaborating with government. I mean, that's the most important. That's a very important thing. Collaborating with educational systems and institutions, and how do we do that? Collaborating with various industry partners. So it's all critical to bring that. And like we both Layla and I said earlier, the fashion industry isn't what people do think it is. I mean, there's a lot of skills required and a lot of technology innovation required that actually can service our own backyard and potential for exports.
So it sounds like we've got a lot to do, and it's which way to run first. Layla, any insights on that?
Yeah, look, I agree with John. So much to do, and we are working as the Australian Fashion Council, and you all know John is the deputy chair and has been with the council way longer than I have. But we're working towards a roadmap for the industry. I think that's what we need, a very clear roadmap in collaboration with government, in collaboration with industry, to look at two areas. One area is the demand side. How do we ensure that brands, Australian brands, continue to thrive, and in particular during this COVID period with retail and the whole industry being affected, tourism, everything. The other side, of course, and that is more a longer term initiative, will be the supply side of things. So what sort of education, training, skills do we need, do we have, and do we need to work on together with hopefully IPSA and you know, the education ministry, federal ministries and so on, to map out what is needed to become a thriving, resilient, you know, industry 4.0 sector, basically. And that's going to need a lot of work. It can be done. We are working towards that. I believe we'll be working with the Australian Design Council, whose initiative is all about you know, looking at how manufacturing and innovation and technology can be implemented into our sector in a way that, you know, gives us the edge, I guess, globally, to compete with things like very cheap labor overseas. That's one of the main.
Down the hallway. On each side.
I think that's one of the main areas that we need to look at. How can we compete in areas other than cheap paper, because that area is not our forte, nor do we want it to be our forte, right? And so there's a huge opportunity there. I will say that when we talk about manufacturing, there's a lot more than just the making of product. There's so many other careers in areas like industrial engineering, fashion technology, merchandise planning, and of course sales and marketing, huge e-commerce and digital marketing opportunities, and of course, and last but seriously not least, are opportunities in recycling, circular economy practice that could be very much brought into house. I think for us also, we need to start to look at Australian brand rather than Australian made only. Absolutely, we will hero and want to hero and put up there and highlight Australian made as in manufactured, but that's a very small piece of the whole value chain. The value chain is, as I said before, includes so much, and we need to think of what can we do in Australia. For example, can we take our cotton and wool and spin it here and scour here and gin here and do all that sort of stuff instead of sending it overseas, getting it to the next level of value add there and then bringing it back here. So much we can do across the board from A to Z. Locally, and we have a great opportunity here because Australian textiles, Australian uniforms, Australian fashion and apparel and clothing, relatively small industry. We believe it's about 30 billion in value to the GDP, so not that small, but compared to the rest of the world, we're relatively small. We're agile and we're ready for change, and we're very collaborative at the moment. So I believe we've got a huge opportunity.
It certainly sounds so, Leila. And look, this conversation is generating a lot of questions coming up, but I might just throw to Anna just to add anything she might want to. And just before I do, can I just remind people, if you can mute if you're not talking, it just stops the noise coming across the speakers. That'd be fantastic. Anna, sorry, your thoughts on the modern manufacturing and the opportunities it might provide for us, this strategy?
Our particular industry is an ageing industry, so there's a lot of skills that are actually being lost along the way. We're finding it very difficult to attract a younger generation in order to ensure that some of those skills are not lost completely. But having said that, modern manufacturing is necessary because it improves quality and the type of textiles that are available. And it also provides opportunity for advancement in digitalisation as well, in technical work. So computer-aided design, cutting, which is also now digital, and various fabrication methods. We're finding more and more ways that textiles can be used. Improving the quality of textiles allows us to expand on what the industry can offer, both in traditional and emerging markets. But our industry in particular, is relying a lot on the technical aspects and the machinery and the equipment and the digitalisation that's been brought in order to attract the younger demographic, to keep them interested. Many don't even know that a textiles industry actually exists in Australia, and I'm talking about industrial textiles more so, and the products that are being made. The products that our members make are one-off, bespoke. They're not mass produced. They're individual, one of a kind, and we're finding that Australia is actually leading the way in this particular area as well. So skills always needed. Always need improving, and always looking at how to attract new incomers into the industry by providing some advancement.
Dave, you mentioned skills just then, Anna. I'm just looking at some of the questions, and we might have time for a couple, and I'm just going to pick out one from John Drain here. John, she's directed this one at you. You mentioned skills at risk. Now, could you be more specific about that, provide some more insights around that one?
So it's great coming up with a concept, And anyone can do that or not. I think everyone's capable of actually designing in some way or form or coming up with the concept. But actually putting it together and knowing how things are constructed, that actually has a long life. At the end of the day, we want to create sustainable products that has a product life cycle for a long period of time. That skill set is probably the most critical to start with in the product development stage. So do our up-and-coming I guess product developers have a full understanding of what it's like to construct a garment? Or is it just creating a digital technical pack that we send overseas and then expect a garment to come back to what we want? So I think there's a big gap around that space. Quality, understanding what quality actually, not only in the fibre but in the garment, there's a big gap in that space. I could probably go on, but they're probably the first two that I could reach out with.
And I think you're getting a lot of heated agreement in that, John. Everyone's nodding, so I think that's a good one. I've got another question that's come through, and this one I think is directed perhaps at Layla. Layla, you mentioned before about skilled workforce and ensuring that we really do need to attract new entrants into the manufacturing sector. But Alison Bradshaw's asked us, is any ideas on what can be done to make this happen?
I think we need to ensure that there's a clear career pathway, that working in this industry is a sustainable career, that people can come in and have a job that is rewarding to them financially and personally, and that they feel that they're doing something that's contributing to themselves and to the whole industry, to Australia, to the world, really. So at the moment, again, the industry had, really shriveled over, I hate to say the word over the last 20 years for many reasons. One, when tariffs were removed. Two, because of the low cost of labor overseas, and many other reasons. So we need to clarify what that is. We need to look at what can we do to grow the industry again, going back to that 12-month, 2-year, 5-year, and 10-year roadmap, super clear roadmap across the whole value chain, but then also really mapping out all the skills that exist, that are required, and and really talking about what kind of career can you have in this industry. Again, it could be anywhere from, something incredibly creative in design all the way to, something incredibly technical and digital. And so that's what we need to identify. We need to go back to schools as well and explain to kids, I guess, what are the opportunities here. And we need to diversify in this industry. Unfortunately, I feel that, if men, for example, this is the first time you'll hear me say this, because I'm always banging on about how there aren't enough women in C-level and board levels, right? In our industry even, which is about 90%, or let's not say 90, I'm going to say 80%, in particular in fashion, I have to admit, women, right? And so where are the men in that mix? And why don't we have a greater mix of younger, older, different ethnicities, different backgrounds, and also different skills?
Couldn't agree more, Layla. And it certainly sounds like there's plenty of opportunities, but also challenges for the sector for the next wee while. Lots of comments coming up, but I'm going to have to stop it there. We're going to have time in the breakout sessions to unpack this a little bit more. Thank you very much for our panelists. I think that certainly got us all thinking about lots of different opportunities. And I think it was really great to hear about the collaboration and whether we can work together. How can we actually make all this work in the right time to deliver the right results for everyone? Before we go into the breakout sessions, I've got a quick 3-question poll. This is where obviously you guys need to explain to us what's important. And we've got ideas, but I think at the end of the day, you're the ones that actually know more than anyone. These questions will be repeated across each of the webinars in the series that we've got, and they've been designed to gather, I suppose, a large quantum of data as part of the report. Look, I'll just pass over it. I've done a run through with Michelle, and it's not too painful. At least she assures me it's not. Michelle, can you take us through what needs to be done now? So just to help everyone interpret these live results, the first one is about have you identified opportunities for your business or industry as part of supply chain supporting the 6 modern manufacturing priority areas. And as you can see, some people have, and look, I've made some of between 1 and 2. There's some great. There's actually between 3 and 4, which is fantastic. A couple none. So clearly, there's plenty of opportunities, or at least this group thinks there is. The second question was around how are the job roles changing, and the way we work is organised. Way we work is changing. Increased demand for workers with specialist skills has certainly come up as a key change, as is the adoption of new and emerging technologies. They certainly seem to be the standouts from that response. And then the last question was around, will workforce skills development be critical for your business skills? At least that's what was on my notes. Adoption of new and emerging technology, yeah, and you can see that there's a great extent of that. So we might close that out, but what that means, certainly from my perspective, is that there's a lot of change ahead, but a lot of opportunities, which is excellent. So with that in mind, we're now going to move into the facilitated breakout sessions to dig a bit deeper into those specific areas, and then we'll come back to provide a wrap-up. The breakout sessions isn't for too long. As you can see, the webinar's drawn an overwhelming number of attendees, which is testament, obviously, to the textile sector and its commitment to being part of the national discussion on modern manufacturing. It's really important to hear your views and voices today, so hence the reasons for the breakout. For those of you that selected a group and you've been assigned to that group, where you didn't get a chance, you've been allocated to a group. But please be reassured that the same questions apply against each group. It's just that you mightn't be with the same people. For instance, you can see on the screen now, the groups are design, development, fabrication, production, assembly, and services. I think any second now, we are going to Zoom into a breakout room. Apparently, it's not going to be terribly painful. And you'll be supported by your facilitators, who you can see on the screen now, their names. But look, again, if you have any problems when you move in and out of that breakout session, please contact the support number on the email. But there's nothing you need to do other than sit tight. And I look forward to seeing you in half an hour to hear how it all went. Michelle, can you do your magic?
I will do my magic. Thank you very much, Sharon. So I'm just going to start the breakout sessions. You will be asked to join, and you will go through from there. Thanks, everybody. See you on the other side.
Thank you, Michelle, and welcome back, everyone. I'm hoping you all found that breakout group that you're in just as interesting as the one that I was sitting in. I found so many things going through my mind, lots of really good input, but I'd love to hear how everything went. We probably don't have time. We've got 11 minutes left, but I'm just going to ask the facilitators if you could maybe give us, the group, one key takeout from your session. Hildy, I think our session was fabulous. Do you want to kick off and share your insights from our group discussions?
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. Well, Cheryl suggested that our main ones are that sales and distribution have changed substantially. Thanks very much for that one. And there's a move towards more collaborative way of working in the future, which itself brings a whole slew of things to consider as well.
I totally agree, and certainly another key thing that I heard was around that sustainability and that ethical approach to what we do needs to be, I suppose, much more strongly embedded in the training and whatnot that we provide. Kay, you were looking after the development and fabrication group. How was your conversation?
Well, it was really good, Sharon. One of the things that it was fairly obvious that the industry is eager to adopt new technologies and are adopting new technologies. But there was a lot of conversations about that adoption phase. So you've identified the new technology, you then adopt it, and what sort of skills do you and your workforce need? And it was very much about soft skills, a combination of soft skills, critical thinking, and then also the technical skills. So there was a lot of conversation about the industry's need to have critical thinking to adopt these new technologies.
Okay, so using soft skills to adopt and apply those technologies.
Yeah, well, I suppose the technologies are out there, but once you've decided on what new technology you need to use, you've then got to bring it in-house, and you've got to have that capability to be able to be adaptable. Things won't go right, things may go right, and it was more about the fact that in this instance, you don't have the technical knowledge, but you do certainly need that critical thinking knowledge.
Yeah, no, really, really good point. I imagine the timeliness of all this too was probably a point of the discussion.
There certainly was, because a lot of the new technologies come from overseas, and then when you're adopting it, particularly under COVID, I'm sure that would bring some challenges in today's environment.
Absolutely. Kay, thank you. Sounds like a really good conversation. Looking forward to hearing the rest of the comments. Leon, you were looking after production, assembly and services. How did your discussion go?
Yeah, look, it was a bit of a ranging conversation, but one of the key themes was about the alignment of things that people learn and how they apply them on the job, and particularly around the more of what I'd call the blood and gut side of the industry, around how we apply those technologies and skills in a practical way on the job, and understanding that there is a significant amount of industry and opportunity for people to get involved with. There is some concern about, I guess, a lack of support that has been there, I guess, for the industry up to this point. So hopefully that'll change now that we've got this manufacturing strategy starting to develop. But in the whole, I think people are very keen to engage more generally with the training system and making sure that people are understanding what the needs are of industry, and whether they be technological or just the hard craft and the skills that support, the rest of the sector.
That sounds not dissimilar. We're talking about engagement, collaboration certainly seems to have come through every one of the breakout groups. I think our group, instead of calling it blood and guts, we preferred it to be referred to as nitty gritty. But at the end of the day, it's really getting to the key skills that will actually really drive the outcomes and the outputs going forward, but also the uncertainty that we're facing going forward, and how do we navigate through that. And I think that collaboration came through as a key point there. Look, we might have to end this session now because we want to make sure that we wrap up in time so that you can get on with your days. And I would normally hand back over to the chair, but Leon, you're already here. So I'll hand back to you, Leon.
Okay, just unmuting. It's one of those things, you've got to continually remind yourself that you're silenced. Some people like that I'm silenced, I think. I'd like to join Sharon in thanking all of you for participating today. The large number of registrations is certainly testament to the fact that the textiles and apparel industry is clearly committed to contributing its part to the future success of manufacturing in Australia. We hope that you've found an opportunity to join your industry colleagues at this webinar a valuable experience. A special thanks also to our panellists, Leela, Anna and John. It has been a pleasure to have you share your insights. Well, as we come to an end of this webinar, where to from here? Supported by IBSA, the chairs of its industry reference committees are looking forward to providing government with on-the-ground input on what is needed by industry to support the future success of Australian manufacturing. We'll have a further opportunity to provide any additional thoughts through a short survey that will be circulated post this webinar. Given the level of interest this webinar has generated, please look out for the future IBSA industry events in the first half of 2021. Thank you all for your time and participation. It has been a pleasure to have you join us today and share your vision for the future of textiles and apparel. Thank you.
Thanks, Leon. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks for your time.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.